what's your favorite Harper Lee story?
Well, I just heard one that was so funny. That, I mean, do you want to tell it?
No, go ahead.
No, she said that when Mimi, this lady I just met today, which is not in the book, but she said that her grandmother knew her and said, what did it feel like when what did you do the minute you heard you won the Pulitzer? And she said, I vomited. So I just heard that. I don't know if that's, but that's pretty, I mean, there were so many. Jennings Carter, when Jane Ellen Clark, who is the curator, she said, when you meet him, it's going to give you chills because his arm hangs at a 90-degree angle to his body, just like Jim's. And when he came in, he's like, I don't know what I can tell you that hadn't been told. And he was just so, and I said, well, let's just tell me about the games you played, or tell me about your favorite, dessert or what. And so those, it was like those kind of stories. A.B. Blass, the story I liked was he was this wild boy who would climb up into the clock tower. Everybody would climb up into the clock tower to watch what was going on down on the square. And he said that when he was a teenager, there was a clock winder who was a drinker, and he'd pass out, and so A.B. and the boy would go up and wind the clock for him. But one Saturday night at midnight, the clock struck 12 times, and he took a crowbar and hit it, and it struck 13 times. And so the next day, everybody was like, did you hear the clock struck 13 times last night? and then the next week, they did it again, and then the drinker clockwinder was like, oh, A.B., I got to take that clock to Atlanta. Something's wrong with it. It's not doing well. And A.B. goes, I think I know how to fix it. And then he stopped doing it. So, I mean, just stories like that were really fun. And I was able to get some of them in, but not nearly as many as I wanted. So, anybody else have any? Yes?
What do you do with all those little bits and pieces of things that you collect after you finally write the story and it's published and all that? Do you keep all that
I
stuff?
keep it all. I really do. I mean, this is...
Scrapbook it? Or
I have, you know what, I have a suitcase here. If I had a table, I could show you, we could pass. I have letters, notes, and so I keep it all, because I think I'd like to go back and maybe do, I don't know if it wouldn't necessarily be a companion piece, but I think that there's and I also transcribed a lot. I have, like Catherine Tucker Wyndham, I taped, and Mary Ward Brown, so I have those, it helps to get into the voice of who I'm writing about if I rewrite everything, if I just transcribe it all myself, and then I can shape it and think, okay, that's a great, little snippet of, like Catherine talking about when she went to Huntington College, and she said that she was a journalism major and a writer, or English major, and they said to her, she went to the Montgomery editor and said, I'd like a job. And he said, well, it was 1939, and he said, well, you're a good writer, and I'd hire you if you were a man, but I'm not going to hire you because it's, but then so she had to go home and work in insurance, and we're in, not Monroeville, but Thomasville. And so she went down to work with her mother in Thomasville. Then the war broke out. So they called her back up and said, we got a job because all the men have gone off to war. Would you cover crime? And she's like, I'm going to cover crime. And so she covered crime. And but the police chief said, what's a lady doing covering crime? You ought to be writing about society and weddings. And she said to me, I didn't care, who carried what in the nosegay and what colored lime green or whatever. I didn't care. She said, so I told him, I don't know enough adjectives. She goes, I don't think he knew what I meant. But she goes, crime was where the stories were. That was where the people were. And so so spending that time with her, and then when in the civil rights in Selma, she covered that, and just her husband and the 3 kids, and so those were these relationships that it's not just interviews anymore. It becomes like you get to the story and to the heart, and I felt really, really lucky to get to write this book. It led to moving to Birmingham. So anyway, any other questions about writing or stories or?
Think you'll ever do another biography? And if so, who would you like to be?
After this was over, I thought, no way am I ever doing this. It was like this. Oh, I mean, but I thought of doing Truman because I have so much material. But then, because this is a series for young adults, my editor's like, no, can't do. I'm not doing Truman. That didn't happen. So, I love Flannery O'Connor. There's so many writers that other writers I thought would be really interesting to do. But I write fiction, and so I wanted to write a book about my growing up. My son had an obsession with Hamlet and werewolves, and as a little boy, he'd cut off all his hair and glued it to his arms to become, in preschool. The teacher was horrified. He took one of those little scissors and, because he wanted to be the Wolfman. We only let him see movies from before 1950, so he loved the Wolfman, Larry Talbot. He'd introduce himself as Larry Talbot. I'm Larry Talbot. And so I wanted to write this novel about this wild LA kid, and so it's sort of a Valentine to all my kids, and so I just finished that. So maybe I'll think about going back, but I haven't really planned on a biography right now. But I think this is the Alabama story surround Harper Lee. That's what I'm thinking, and then finishing novel and so forth. All right. Any other questions or? Well, thank you all so much. I'll be happy we can talk some more back there, but thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Jay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.